Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Healing Brain. This is our weekly webinar and podcast at Doman International, where families with children with special needs join from around the world and bring with them their biggest and most important questions. And we do our very best to answer those tough questions for parents. On this week's episode of The Healing Brain, we're going to be discussing what special needs children can be helped by the Doman Method. What are the specific diagnoses and developmental delays that the Doman Method can help with? Because, for many parents, it's a challenge to understand how an organization like Doman International could help patients that vary from having severe or profound comas all the way to children who might have the mildest of learning challenges like dyslexia, right? Or dyscalculia, the difficulty with understanding math. Like, how can Doman International help both of those kinds of children? And so in today's episode, we're going to be discussing this and answering this. And really, another way of framing this question is, can the Doman Method help your child? So hopefully by the end of today's presentation, you will have an answer to that question. Now, a couple of quick announcements to get into before I jump into this topic. So Doman International has some big trips coming up. In April, we are going to be seeing families at our international location in Pisa, Italy, our European center. So if you're in Europe, that's the best place to see Doman International. We're in May going to be seeing families in New Delhi and Bangalore, India. In June, we're going to be seeing families in Australia. In July, we're going to be back in Italy seeing our European families. In August, we're going to be in New Zealand. In September, we're going to be in Serbia and Croatia and also Florida. We are centrally located here in Philadelphia in the United States. That's where our headquarters are. And of course, we also do remote appointments with families from all around the world. So if you have any questions about coming to Doman International, feel free to put them in the comments box. And as I go through my presentation today, feel free to ask any questions by typing in the comments box. Whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, I can answer your questions. All right, let me jump into the conversation of today, which is what special needs children can be helped by the Doman Method. And I'm going to be just quickly sharing my screen so you can see some of the common diagnoses that we see with the Doman Method. Give me 1 second while I show this. All right. So what children and diagnoses are helped with the Doman Method? Hopefully you can all see my slideshow. And I'm sharing here the most common diagnoses that we see. So we have autism, which is the most common diagnosis that we see at Doman International. But we also have cerebral palsy, right? Which is another special need that presents very different symptoms from autism. We see children diagnosed with ADD and ADHD. We have been helping children with learning difficulties and dyslexia for 70 years. About 40% of the children that come to Doman International have epilepsy, right? Have a history of seizures. Almost every child we see has some kind of developmental delay. Brain injury, right? Many children and adults come to us diagnosed with brain injury. We do see some children with a diagnosis of cortical blindness and visual impairment. We have many children diagnosed with speech delay. You can see there trisomy 21, which is more often called Down syndrome, and many genetic disorders. The last time we sat down and counted the number of diagnoses that we have seen over the last 70 years, we are now talking about in the thousands of diagnoses, because first of all, we have the many diagnoses that are given to children with different forms of developmental delay, but we also now see hundreds or perhaps even thousands of different genetic diagnoses, including incredibly rare genetic diagnoses where there may only be a few children in the world that are known to have that diagnosis. Now, looking at this list, many parents would say, how can you possibly help all of these children? Children with autism might have sensory and speech and behavioral challenges, and children with cerebral palsy might have severe rigidity in their arms and legs and be unable to speak and have articulation issues and mobility and balance problems. And ADD and ADHD, okay, they have attention issues and learning difficulties. They have trouble, taking in information. How can you possibly help all of these children? The answer is because all of these children, even though they have very different symptoms, the root cause of their challenges in life are all in the brain and in the brain's development. The brain is the command center of the body. It controls everything we do, right? Right now, my ability to speak and express myself to you today is all thanks to my brain sending information to my mouth. And you're on the other end watching me and listening to me, and neurons are carrying information from your eyes and ears to your brain, and you're able to understand what I am saying if I'm doing a good enough job in explaining myself. And so our brains are those very important command centers. They allow us to both learn and express ourselves. And so when brain development is affected, it's going to affect our ability to learn, which is take in information, or express ourselves, which is output, right? Information being sent from the brain to our hands, our bodies, our mouths, right? To express what we know. And so all of these children and adults who have these diagnoses have a neurodevelopmental condition. This is very important to understand. These aren't mysterious conditions as they are often described. Many people will say something like, autism is a disorder that is not well understood. And, you'll often hear those kind of things being said or written about, right? And actually, there's a lot of understanding about all of these different conditions. What parts of the brain have been affected? How severely have they been impacted? And most importantly, from Doman International standpoint, what are activities that we can start to develop those areas of the brain, get that command center working better, and then the symptoms start to reduce, and in some cases even go away, right? The brain is able to develop thanks to a phenomenon called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change thanks to stimulation and also challenge. And so everything in the Doman method, virtually everything, falls into one of two categories, or sometimes both: stimulation or challenge, right? Stimulation could be visual, auditory, or tactile stimulation, where we're stimulating the brain using the sensory pathways. Challenge, on the other hand, are usually motor activities, right? Different kinds of mobility, speech, or manual exercises that challenge the brain to grow and develop. So very important to understand, all Doman method programs are brain focused. If we don't help the brain develop better, the symptoms will persist. If we can get the brain functioning better, the symptoms start to go away. And so that's what the Doman method is all about. And we do that by taking 6 different components and merging them into a single program, right? So for every child we see, we will design a program for them using these 6 different components. And I want to quickly run through these with you. So you can see in the center, it says Doman method, and then around it, there are kind of 6 different puzzle pieces here. So if we start at the top, the first is nutrition and supplementation, right? So every child that comes to Doman International's clinic by one of our nutritionists is given a nutrition program, which includes a specialized diet and a supplement plan. Very important for me to say, these are all dietary and supplement recommendations to help improve brain function. And we do that because of the gut-brain connection. Outside of the brain, the largest number of brain cells or neurons are actually in our digestive tract. And so the gut and the brain are constantly in communication. That's why there's that old saying, I made the decision with my gut, right? That saying was long before they understood the gut-brain connection and that brain cells were inside of our digestive tract. Humans just intuitively understood there's something about the gut that's important for function and decision making, and that's exactly right. So by helping heal the gut, by having an excellent diet and giving the child the right supplements, we can indirectly, and in some cases even directly, improve brain function with the right kinds of vitamins and supplements. So that is a cornerstone of our program, and we use it with every child. Next, you can see sensory stimulation. Sensory stimulation is a huge part of the Doman method, right? We do visual stimulation, auditory stimulation, and tactile stimulation. These sensory pathways are pathways that carry information into the brain. Right now, you're able to watch me with your eyes, listen with your ears, understand what is being said because of those sensory pathways. What happens is when brain development isn't normal, that constructs a barrier to those sensory pathways working well, right? The child may not see well, hear well. What they experience might be chaotic or disturbed in some way. That's why we have many children who are hypersensitive to light or sound or touch. And so by doing lots of sensory stimulation, we're able to improve the sensory areas of the brain that really helps the child focus better, learn better, and interact with their environment better. Third, we have mobility. Every child on the Doman method is given a mobility program. From children who are completely immobile and unable to move, with those children, we say, okay, what do we need to get this child doing to get them walking, right? The goal there is clear. For an immobile child, what are the different steps we're going to have to put into place to get that child walking? For a child who is able to walk and run, we give them mobility exercises, of course, to help improve coordination and balance. But also, just as importantly, there are many mobility activities that help create cognitive changes that improve cognitive development. And so for each child, we do those activities. Fourth, we have cognition and speech. The Doman method is probably best known for our cognition programs, like our early reading, our early math programs, right? It's common on the Doman method for us to have 2-year-olds with Down syndrome who read. That's common, right? We recently had a girl, 4 years old, again with Down syndrome, who was able to type independently at 4, right? Most average children, neurotypical children, don't type until they're 6, 7 years of age. He or she was at 4. And keep in mind, the reason why I use her as an example, we have many children who learn to write and type at 4, but I use her as an example because children with Down syndrome are often assumed to have learning difficulties. Very often in our school system, they often don't receive the same kind of teaching and instruction as other children because it's just assumed, this child's not going to read well, they're not going to write well, what's the point? That's terrible, by the way, but that's a discussion for another day. So what we do is we have learned over the last 60 years, what are the best ways to stimulate a child cognitively, even a child who can't speak? How can we get that child speaking, reading, doing math, doing high-level problem solving that will help them in the long run, help them become independent in school and interact with others. Fifth, we have the oxygenation program, which is a program that involves specialized masks that improve oxygen delivery to the brain. Oxygen is the food of the brain. The brain needs oxygen to survive, right? The average human might be able to survive a few weeks without water or food, but if all the oxygen in this room were sucked out, I'd only be able to survive maybe 3-4 minutes without oxygen. So oxygen is the food of the brain. The cells need oxygen to survive. Many children with special needs do not breathe normally. They have shallow breathing. They might breathe through their mouths. They might have irregular patterns of breathing. And so with our oxygenation program, we're able to deliver more oxygen to the brain. When we do that, we see better focus and concentration, better learning ability, usually better speech. For children with motor issues, challenges with controlling their body, they have better control over their muscles with increased oxygenation. And we tend to see reduced seizures as well. Some children, we can even completely prevent seizures with our oxygenation program. Last but not least, we have social development. So, the social development really comes last in many ways because with the other parts of the program, if we can, with the Doman method, help a child learn faster and easier so they can succeed in school, if we can improve their sensory abilities, right, to reduce those auditory and tactile issues that might be creating chaos for them, if we can improve their mobility so they can engage in play and sports with other children, right? Basically, if we can put all these other puzzle pieces into place, social development then becomes much, much easier. If a child can talk and learn and interact, now they're in a place to succeed from a social standpoint, right? They can go to school with other kids, make friends, interact with others, grow from those interactions. So we do have social development programs, but we really have to make sure these other 5 pillars are in place to have the kind of success that we want to see with social development. And sometimes we even address these other 5 pillars and the social development part just falls into place because the child progresses so much. Now they can speak, they can understand, and now they're confident enough to go and play and interact with other children and learn from other children. Now, you can see the Doman method has these 6 components. By the way, I want to say these 6 components aren't necessarily set in stone. When my grandfather started the Doman method, it didn't include really nutrition and supplementation. That was a pillar that was added later on as he learned how important gut health was for brain development, right? Oxygenation was something that was added again in the early years of the Doman method, but added. So there might be additional pillars that we will add over time, okay, as we have in the past. Now we have last time we sat down and counted, we have over 400 different treatments that are in the Doman method. So I couldn't possibly go over all 400 of those, but each one falls within one of these 6 components. Okay. And so in each of these 6 components, there are hundreds of different treatments included. That means hundreds of different protocols that our clinical staff uses to address specific issues in the children. When we use these 6 components together, that's when we get the best results. Okay. And so that's why we do it, right? And that's why we, with almost every child, address their neurological challenges with all 6 components. Very often, if you go to a therapy center or some kind of treatment center for children with special needs, you might find one of these addressed. If you're lucky, you might find 2, right? Like, for example, maybe you could go to a clinic that does some sensory stimulation and some mobility exercises. It's possible. Now, the exercises they use, are they optimal? Probably not, but there are some places that have started to address multiple components here. But I don't know of any other methodology that includes these 6 components. And in fact, I don't know of any methodology that even includes, at least 4 of these components. And that's how we're really able to achieve the best results, by attacking the neurological issue from different pathways. And I also want to say, when we see a child, of course, using our clinical experience, we're often able to say, you know what, with this child's issues, we think nutrition and supplementation will be most helpful. Or for this child, they really need an oxygenation program. Our clinical experience is good enough to be able to determine that, but we are never sure from the outset. Even the most experienced Doman International staff are never able to predict exactly what of these components is going to help the child have the best results. And that's very important to understand, right? Because each child is an individual. Their brain, their body's physiology, their breathing, their sleep, all of these things play some kind of impact, right? And also even genetics, which is something that we don't have any control over. And so by attacking the neurological issue with these different components, we can see which of these has the best response with that child, right? So we start with the child and we go, whoa, we just started a new supplement plan and this child is getting better. Guys, let's focus more of our time and attention toward this, right? Or, oh, this child is really benefiting from sensory stimulation. Let's focus more time and attention toward that with this child. It's a very useful experience for our parents and our staff alike to get the best results with children. Well, that is hopefully I have helped address, what special needs children can be helped by the Doman method, but virtually any child with a developmental delay, a special need, any neurodevelopmental condition, a genetic condition that leads to learning or developmental challenges, virtually all of these children can be helped with the Doman method. And the best next step, if you're still in a position where you're not really sure if we can help your child, the next best step is for you to reach out to us. Go to domaninternational.org to get more information. I'm going to throw up some contact information now, hopefully, that I can pull up. Actually, I see Colleen is here. Hi, Colleen.
Hi, Spence. How are you?
Hi, very good. And the other thing to kind of take the next step and see if the Doman method can be helpful for your child is to talk to Colleen.
Yes.
And Colleen, I know I've got there it is. I have your contact information.
Good. Very good. Yep.
Yeah. So there's Colleen's email address and phone number if you want to reach out to her to discuss more. Anything, Colleen, that you want to add to what I said about what children can be helped?
Well, unfortunately, I will say we weren't able to see your graphic.
Oh no!
Yeah,
that's terrible.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Oh no! I feel so badly because unfortunately, when I pull the graphic up, I can't see the screen.
Yeah.
Okay. So you couldn't see anything?
No, we saw.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay. So maybe we can
Yeah.
show that at some point if you can pull it up just as as an image so families can see it. But you explained it really well. And I think that ultimately, since there we go. Yes. Since every family's situation is very individual, the best way to move, to get more information is to get in touch with us directly, because we have answers for so many different kids. But if you're wondering, does it include my kid? Just get in touch with us, and we can get to the bottom of it. And there's never any obligation. I think families should know that. Ideally, of course, we would see you and your child, but there are lots of different options for utilizing the Doman method. It is a parent-driven program, so we've got a lot of information to share with families that you can, I think sometimes when I talk to parents, most of the families I speak with have already gotten to the point where they recognize they are the experts in their children. And even though they've been seeing specialists and trying to get answers for their kid, ultimately their own gut, as you mentioned, their own understanding of their child's needs is going to lead them in the right direction if they allow themselves to listen to it. So if you're one of those parents who's joining us thinking, I'm really feeling like the things we've been trying so far haven't really gotten us where I want to go, listen to that voice. Don't let other people talk you out of it, to say, oh, just hang in there a little longer. Speech therapy for another year. Why not? Like, I mean, yeah,
definitely. There are times in life to be patient, but there are other times where, it's if you're going down a road and you're seeing it's not delivering results, it's time to move on. And I see that we've got some questions here. Let me stop sharing my screen. All right, we've got a question here. Hello from Ukraine. When can you visit? Okay. Well, first of all, welcome. We actually have, a good number of Ukrainian families on the Doman Method program, and have probably since 2012 would be my guess. So what is that, about 13, 14 years at this point? Are Ukrainian families who are currently on the program do a combination of different things. Some families do remote appointments if that's easiest for them, where they do online. They get an online evaluation and programming with our staff. But we also have locations around the world where families can come and visit based on where they live, because we have some Ukrainian families that currently live in Ukraine, and then we have Ukrainian families who are also in different countries around the world. And so some come to our our clinic in Italy. Some, as I said, do remote appointments. So probably the best thing is for you, Diana, to reach out to Colleen and maybe just discuss what's the best possibility there. And I see Diana has met Douglas. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, Douglas is my dad. And that's wonderful that you met him. That's great. My dad, I wonder if you met him, Diana, in Ukraine, because he probably went and lectured there in 2015 would be my guess, around that time. So that's great. All right. Yeah, Diana is saying that, yeah, she wants children to know about us, and you want to organize a meeting here. Okay, wonderful. Yeah. So I will throw Colleen's information back up on the screen, and feel free to reach out to her, Diana, to talk more. All right. Let's see what else we've got here. We've got a question here from Jane. Can you tell us how you specifically help children who are autistic? Can you tell us how this program differs for teenagers and adults with autism as well? Yeah, I think if we look at how children with autism are usually treated, let's say with the traditional therapy model, they'll usually get some speech therapy, right? They might get it maybe once or twice a week for maybe 30 minutes, where the speech therapist will try to encourage the child to talk. And then I would say most children with autism now are recommended ABA therapy as well, which, ABA therapy involves, kind of systematically running through different exercises in a kind of repeated way. But what I would say is that the Doman method greatly differs from traditional therapy. First of all, from our brain-focused approach. Every program that we teach parents, we understand what areas of the brain that program, directly helps influence, which is very important. I always say to parents that when you meet a new therapist or anyone involved in treatment with children with special needs, you should be able to ask them, hey, this activity you're teaching me to do, how does this impact brain development? And if they cannot answer that question, that is a warning sign, because it really means they don't understand why they're doing it, or their understanding is wrong. So first, I think with the Doman method, we do understand that we have to focus on brain development. And then I would say, going back to what I was discussing before, Jane, that it's really the holistic approach that we take. If we look at certain parts of our program, like the oxygenation component, or nutrition and supplementation, these are things that, oxygenation is not really used anywhere else with children with a diagnosis of autism. Nutrition and supplementation, there are certain nutritionists in the world that have some understanding around what kind of diet and supplementation can help these children, but rarely is it ever used in a holistic sense with cognitive and mobility and oxygenation programs, right? So I think it's really our team focused approach of, helping address, various areas of the brain with various different interventions. Anything, Colleen, you want to add to that?
Just, yeah, get in touch with us. Really. I mean, I know I feel like I'm banging on about it, but it really is true. I was talking to a mother last week, and she was telling me how her son received a diagnosis of autism, and everybody that she knows said, "Oh, well, that's not what I think of. Your son isn't what I think of when I think of an autistic kid." And I said to her, "That's why we really don't worry too much about the diagnosis, because there's no such thing as that. That kid. Every kid is their own individual self. So by addressing each kid in that way as an individual, we can get much better results than somebody." This is what she was saying, that the school said, "Okay, well, now he's got this diagnosis and here are the therapies that we do and we provide." But she said, "I don't feel like my son needs all of those, or that they're the appropriate thing for him." She said, "I really feel like now we're in this cookie cutter kind of conveyor belt."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there have been children who have joined our program, and I think this demonstrates how some of these diagnoses can be very confusing and not very helpful for parents. So we've had children that join our program in coma, for example, and we do a lot of sensory stimulation with them, and we do our oxygenation program, and we do nutrition and supplementation, and the child comes out of the coma, right? And the parents will kind of bring the child back to the doctors, and the doctors will say, "Okay, child's not in coma anymore, but your child is severely brain injured." Okay. And parents say, "Okay." And they come back to our clinic, and we give the child the new program. And maybe after 6 months of getting better, and the child is now moving, and maybe the child is seeing better, the parents will bring the child back to the doctor. Doctor says to the parents, "You know what? Your child isn't severely brain injured anymore. Your child has cerebral palsy now." And parents go, "Okay." And then the parents go back and they, keep doing our program. They get the child walking, and talking, but the child's not walking or talking very well, and they go back to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh, your child now has developmental delay," and so what happens over time is the child, as they advance, they're just getting a new kind of label that just describes the current symptoms.
Yep.
Well, what is really happening is that child's brain is developing, and the injury that occurred in the brain is getting less and less severe, and the symptoms are going away. And then usually, Colleen, what happens at the very end is, as the child gets closer and closer to graduation, the doctor will, parents will bring that same child back to the doctor and say, "Look, my child started in a coma or profoundly brain injured, and look at them now." And the doctor will say, like, "Yeah." And the parents will say, "Well, it's all these things that we did with the child. We've been doing this intensive program for a few years." And the doctor will be like, "Well, it really wasn't that. Like, it would have happened anyway," is what the parents are always told, which is very frustrating. Well, some parents take it, because at that point they're like, "Well, we did this on our own anyway. Thanks so much." But for other parents, it's very frustrating, because they're like, "You've seen this child go from here to here, and you don't want to learn about why that is." So, yeah.
I think it's pretty ridiculous. And I'm saying this as a mother of now someone who's 21 years old, and she's in college and all of that. The number of things that people say, "Oh, well, that just was luck," or that would have happened anyway, or, "Isn't that fortunate that this kid ended up getting there or doing the," whatever it is. There's nothing in life that comes without effort. So
Right.
why would anybody think that, if you have a well kid and they really, yeah, everybody's got particular interests, and maybe that interest turned into a degree of success that, you know, you wouldn't have expected otherwise, or a thriving career or something like that. You're like, wow, this, but it didn't come without any effort. You didn't just sit around like a lump and one day magically you had, you know, a great job you love, or a wonderful spouse, or, you know, like, and the same thing goes for kids, whether, again, whether they have neurological issues or not, nothing comes without effort. So
Right.
why doctors would then turn around after this incredible effort that families put in and say, wow, you know, you're a lucky one. No, we made our luck. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly right. And by the way, there's a comment on Instagram from Manar who actually mentioned something that I meant to talk about. So I'm glad you're asking about this. Up to what age does the Glenn Doman program remain highly effective? I've heard that after 2.5 years, it is not very useful. You know, it's funny, Manar. I've been hearing this more and more recently. I have a feeling there's someone online who's spreading, you know, misinformation. You know, someone online who's saying this only works up to a certain point. Because first of all, neuroplasticity exists throughout our lives. Okay, and so we even do our program with adults. So the idea that there's some end on the timeline is silly. And this last weekend, I had the pleasure of visiting a family who, you know, is interested in starting up our program. They have a baby. They also have a 4.5-year-old. And the dad said to me, you know, we're very interested in starting the reading program with our 4.5-year-old, but is it too late? And I said, of course not. It's never too late. And so I pick up a set of cards with the 4.5-year-old, and I run through them. They're cards that look like this, right? That have, you know, words and also pictures. Okay. So I ran through it with the 4.5-year-old. He was locked in. And then I said, okay, you know, all done with the session. And he said, let's do it again. So I said, okay. So I pulled him out. The 4.5-year-old, this was only the second showing, named every card. So he said cheetah. And I said, that's right. And then he read the word cheetah out loud. And of course, parents were stunned, you know, and that was, now, not every child after one showing learns, but it was a great reminder even to me how even a little bit of stimulation can quickly be absorbed by many children. So absolutely. I mean, the program can be started with a child of any age. Now, what I always tell parents, of course, is the earlier we can start, the better. The sooner we can start, the better. But any age.
May I
Yeah.
quickly mention my, you know, this isn't something that this mother is dealing with happily, but if it ever comes up, just so you know, my own grandfather had a catastrophic car accident in 1980, just a few months after my parents had learned about the Doman Method. And they were, as a direct result of that, able to get him out of a coma, get him walking again, get him driving a car, get him living on his own because my grandmother had already died. He was I want to say he was 55, I think, when all of this happened. Now, he had been a very physically fit person prior to the accident, which worked obviously in his favor. But other than that, there was no other special situation. It was just my parents working with him and having the information and being able to go in and do a program. We actually moved out to Colorado for a little while, though, because they couldn't find a nursing facility here that would allow them to do the program, the floor and everything else. So they found a place in Colorado that said, yes, we'll be hands. He still needed skilled nursing. So he had to be in some kind of, you know, medical facility. But my parents said, no, we're going to be doing a daily program with him. And it worked. And then for the rest of his life, he lived. Now, he still had his brain injury and he had paralysis that was physical on his right side. His right leg was pretty paralyzed, but he could walk and he could drive, and you know,
Yeah.
he used to say, I'm slow, but I get there. And the whole point though is that he had another whole life as a direct result of this.
Absolutely.
And he was not a baby. So
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I had similar situation where my grandfather Max had a stroke in his early 80s and lost all of his speech and was also paralyzed on one side of the body, couldn't walk. And with the program, after 2 weeks of the program, he completely regained his speech. And eventually, it took us months of the program to get him walking again with a cane. But he was able to walk, with a cane. There's no comparison between a life of being speechless, being unable to talk and move, and being able to speak anything you want and walk with a cane. The quality of his life was so much better. And similar to your grandfather, I'm sure his life was increased by years because of what what happened. Yeah. All right, we've got a nice comment here from Karuna, who says, we did a similar program with my 3.5-year-old when seizures were at the onset of seizures. Limited success due to it being so hard. She's now 6.5, and I'd love to try again with Doman. Resources are limited, and I am determined to invest optimally. We need this airway work, a mold-free home, another round of neuro-focused chiro, and treatment for PANS and PANDAS-like symptoms, which emerged in December of 2025. Any guidance welcome.
May I say quickly, so
Yeah.
Karuna had also submitted a question to today's session, so I was going to bring her up. Karuna, hi, and we have spoken, but yeah, let's talk about, because I know also her daughter is very resistant.
Okay.
And that's causing mom a lot of difficulty too, with the butting head. So she was concerned about that, but also just getting a comprehensive plan together to see results.
So our director of nutrition and health, Dr. Aravind Bagade, is phenomenal in every way, but especially in working with pandas. He's really, really good. He and our nutrition team have developed a number of different nutrition and supplementation protocols for those kids. And I can see that you're already, Karuna, very knowledgeable. I see you mentioning things like mold, which we at Doman International, we call mold the silent killer, because it's the kind of thing that, especially when we start to see a child taking a downturn or having some kind of regression in development, it's one of the first things we will look at. So I think that you're in the right place. And definitely we've got, for virtually everything you mentioned, the seizures we can address. And to take on the thing that Colleen mentioned, with a child who is, let's say, resistant to start new things. Well, first of all, sometimes with children, we will focus on beginning the program with a more input or passive approach to the program, where we will give certain activities that actually don't require much work on the part of the child. Even our oxygenation program is mostly passive for kids. You can sit on the couch while doing it. You could watch a screen. I'm not saying you should, but you could. The child can be distracted with a book or with music while they do it, right? We have, multiple different auditory programs that are very good for calming children, reducing anxiety, and frustration and aggression by stimulating the vagus nerve, which is very important for emotional regulation. Again, it's a passive program. Most children just listen to the music through headphones. They think it's something fun. They don't realize it's even a treatment. So we'll usually start with children like this by trying to give a more input focused program. Input meaning we're doing the stimulation on the child, and the child doesn't necessarily have to commit to doing anything themselves. And then as we see the child become more calm and receptive because of the treatment we're doing, then we can start to add more maybe mobility program that involves more activity and collaboration from the child. So listen, we work with children with every diagnosis of every age. We've I've never taken the statistics for the number of children that begin our program who are resistant, but I would say almost every child that does our program is resistant to at least one thing that we teach parents. And we've learned to do two things, right? Number one, when you've been doing something for 70 years, you learn a lot of tricks along the way. And so we could coach parents on try this, try this, try this, and help them. But if those things don't work, then we say, okay, you know what? We'll stop this, right? Because we never want to do something which is going to increase frustration for parents or child, right? That's not the goal of the program. By the way, it's not good for brain development for us to do that, to stress a child. So if something is very stressful, then we say, let's stop that and let's put something else in its place. And we've got enough of a toolbox now that if one thing doesn't work, we just go ahead and add something else. So we can coach you along the way. Colleen, anything else you want to add there for Karuna?
I think, yeah, let's just talk again soon, as soon as you like, and we can continue the discussion. But I do think that, you're going to see a lot of differences with us just in terms of that, covering everything, but also being really compassionate and flexible with what's working for you, what's not working for you, and being able to pivot, with enough speed that you don't feel like you're hammering away at something that's like, this is really frustrating for us all. We don't want that.
Yeah. All right, perfect. If anyone else has any other questions, we've still got a couple more minutes. Annabella says here, we've been told that it's because Vanessa has matured. Oh, so Annabella, are you saying that they're saying the progress that Vanessa has is because she's matured? Is that's what I'm guessing they've said. I mean, listen, technically they're correct. She has matured. But I guess when they say that, they think it's a coincidence. I guess that's what they think. My grandfather, when he had a favorite saying, which was, we're the place where things that would have happened anyway happen, right? Because what he would say that after children got so many results on the program, and parents would tell their doctor or uncle or mother-in-law, look at what happened with the child, and the person would say, it would have happened anyway. So he jokingly said, we're the place where it would have happened anyway, where it happens.
You have to laugh about it, because otherwise it's the most offensive thing in the universe, honestly. Yeah, right. But you have to laugh because you're like, all right, whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
I think humankind has proven that parents are pretty important. I don't think we need, know what I mean? Like, children don't just raise themselves.
One of my favorite Glenn Doman quotes, which I'm sure you know, Colleen, is he used to say, mothers brought us from the caves to the age of reason. And then professionals brought us from the age of reason to the atomic age, meaning they created nuclear weapons. Because honestly, no mom would have ever invented a nuclear weapon. Only a professional would do that. So, moms have done a very, very good job. Oh yeah, Annabella is saying yes. That's the doctor said that, and it's very frustrating. Yeah, I bet. Jane is saying there is no end on the timeline. It is a marathon, which is the most rewarding marathon to ever witness and to be a champion for. There is no data that supports that after 2.5 years, it stops working or it's not very useful. The brain can continue healing, growing, etc. at any time. It is truly never too late. Exactly right. Well said.
Well, otherwise, why would we ever do anything in our adult lives? You just get to it. You're like, okay, I did it. Now I am here. And I guess I won't read that book I've never read. I won't try to learn an instrument or a language or travel or anything.
Or anything. Yeah, why?
Yeah.
We should go to all the universities around the world and just tell them to stop cracking books open
That's
because
right. Yeah.
you're not going to get anywhere. You've matured. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is the professional world that we've been dealing with, on the one hand, they tell us, Colleen, you know, up until maybe usually they'll say 6 years. That's what I usually hear. A child will develop up to 6 years, and then after that, nothing happens. And then when they see us teaching 2-year-olds how to read or teaching them math, they go, they're not ready for that. They say they're not ready. So it's like, okay, are they not ready to learn in the first 6 years of life, or are those the only years they learn? Make up.
Exactly. That's right.
The answer is neither. Neither are true.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
All right. Colleen, Shika is asking how to enroll for this program. She wants to learn about it.
Fabulous.
Yeah. Well, we've
All right,
got
wonderful.
contact information up on the screen. Sheena, anything, Colleen, you want to say about the first call when you
Yeah,
speak?
so the first call is really just for us to talk about what are your child's needs, what are the things that you're most concerned about right now. Knowing that the Doman program is a holistic program, we're going to cover every area of your child's development, maybe even things that you don't think are that big of a deal just yet, or things that you don't realize are interconnected. But really, we want to get to the bottom of, how can we help you in the best way? And then I can tell you the different ways that you can get started working with us. We have, of course, our appointments. That's really the core of everything that we do, that our staff does, is evaluating children, designing programs for them, supporting parents as they carry those programs out at home. And it really is a very I say intensive process, but then I worry because parents who have done intensives are like, whoa. But it's intensive in a way that is very supportive. Like we're not leaving you alone for weeks at a time to figure it out. We've designed a program, and then our staff have a responsibility to make sure that you feel supported the whole way, that you're never wondering, are we doing this right? Should my kid be reacting in this way? We've had several weeks of really good improvements. Can we move on to the next thing? The answer is yes. Call your staff coach. They're going to respond to you immediately and say, let's get going. Or if on the other hand, oh, wow, we've had a few rough weeks for whatever reason, life happens. How do we get ourselves back together? We're there to support you with that as well. So that you really have partners in this process who are very knowledgeable, who have perspective of many, many years, and they're working hand in hand with you, who is the expert in your own kid. It's a very powerful combination.
Perfect. All right. So I think, Colleen, we are all out of questions. So everyone, we hold this webinar every week at the same time. It's called The Healing Brain. And next week's topic is how do I start a Doman reading program with my child? So if you're interested in doing a reading program with your child, we'll be talking next week about how to get started with that.
And if your child is not verbal yet, it's a great program to do. You do not need to be able to speak to be able to read.
So. Exactly right. Thank you. All right, everyone. Well, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you here next Monday. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.